A new Michigan State study finds people systematically underestimate how cynical their friends really are. And the reason it happens is actually kind of beautiful. An aerospace engineer at Georgia Tech did the math on alien interstellar travel, and under current physics, the nearest star system is a minimum 100-year journey at the fastest plausible speed. And research presented at the American Society of Clinical Oncology finds that people under 30 with insomnia are up to 3 times more likely to develop certain cancers. While everyone else was busy arguing about politics, a bunch of other things happened. I'm Keith Conrad, and this is News Side Quest. Welcome to June. A new study from Michigan State University, published in the journal Evolution and Human Behavior, I've got a copy right here, asked 173 pairs of friends to report on their own cynicism and then estimate how cynical their friends were. The finding is both statistically interesting and kind of philosophically satisfying. 3 patterns emerged. First, people consistently underestimated how cynical their friends were, rating them as more benevolent and pro-social than those friends reported being themselves. Second, highly cynical people tend to assume their friends were also highly cynical, while people low in cynicism assumed the same of their friends, a projection effect. Third, there was some genuine accuracy. People's judgments tracked their friends' actual cynicism to a modest degree, but the alignment was limited and consistently skewed positive. Newer friendships showed the largest gap. People significantly underestimated how cynical their newer friends were. The researchers interpret this as evidence that the blind spot is especially active early in a relationship, when people are most motivated to see the best in someone and most invested in the friendship forming and growing. The lead researcher put his conclusion carefully. He said, "Friendships seem to work partly because we see our friends in a slightly kinder and more trusting light than may be fully warranted, and that balance may actually help relationships last. But I also imagine all the ways in which turning a blind eye towards problematic behavior or putting our trust in the wrong people might downsize this." I want to add a layer to this from a separate piece of research we covered earlier this month. Back in April, a Boston Globe piece cited Pew data showing that Americans are the most cynical of any of 25 countries surveyed. 53% of Americans describe their fellow citizens as somewhat or very morally bad. But when those same people were asked about the people they actually knew, friends, family, coworkers, they reported moral improvement over time. Basically, we think humanity in the abstract is absolutely terrible, but the people we actually know are fine. We're all bitter, cynical husks. I want to stand by that as a general observation, while also acknowledging that the research suggests we're doing something quietly generous every time we decide to see our friends more charitably than the data warrants. The friendship is partly held together by the story we're choosing to tell about each other. When did you realize you were more cynical than you used to be? Was there a specific thing that kind of turned the dial, or did it happen gradually?
You know, you should lock your door. There's horrible people out there.
There's horrible people right in here.
Professor Kai James, an aerospace engineer at Georgia Tech, just published a piece in The Conversation that I want to give the full treatment it deserves, because the Pentagon just released a slew of classified UFO documents in the last couple weeks, and I think the context of what's physically possible is pretty useful to keep in mind. The starting point is distance. There's no evidence of intelligent life in our solar system, so any extraterrestrial visitors would have to come from another star system. Proxima Centauri, the closest star to our own solar system, is 4.25 light years away, about 25 trillion miles. For perspective, if Earth were the size of a pea, the distance to Proxima Centauri would roughly equal the distance from New York to Sydney. No object can reach or exceed the speed of light, as far as we know. If it's got mass, it's not going to do it. But well before reaching that threshold, a spacecraft faces catastrophic engineering problems. At just 10% the speed of light, a figure that represents an optimistic cruise speed given known propulsion physics, a journey of 10 light years would take approximately 100 years to complete. The fuel problem is just absolutely mind-boggling. To accelerate a spacecraft to 10% the speed of light, the energy required is just enormous. Using conventional chemical propulsion, the only thing we currently know to have, you'd need a fuel mass many orders of magnitude greater than the spacecraft itself. Even more exotic proposed systems, nuclear pulse propulsion, antimatter drives, face their own severe constraint on energy density, fuel containment, and engineering durability over a century-long time scale. And then there's the structural problem. At 10% the speed of light, even microscopic dust particles become lethal projectiles with the energy of artillery shells. The spacecraft would need shielding capable of withstanding continuous bombardment over 100 years of travel, which adds mass, which requires more fuel, which compounds every single problem. The conclusion Professor James draws is one I think is worth taking seriously. He says, no known law of physics prevents interstellar travel, but the engineering challenges are so severe that any civilization capable of achieving it would need to be so far beyond us technologically that the gap is nearly incomprehensible. The physics makes alien visitors very difficult, but not impossible. The universe is 13.8 billion years old. There has been plenty of time for civilizations to develop technology we can't currently imagine. The question is whether any of them are close enough, interested enough, and capable enough to actually make the trip. The math doesn't rule it out, it just explains why, if they're coming, they probably haven't gotten here yet. Do you actually believe intelligent life exists elsewhere in the universe? And if it were confirmed tomorrow, what would actually change for you?
But somewhere out there, something is watching us. There are alien forces acting in ways we can't perceive. Are we alone in the universe? Impossible. When you consider the wonders that exist all around us, voodoo priests of Haiti, the Tibetan numerologists of Appalachia, the unsolved mysteries of unsolved mysteries. The truth is out there.
New research presented last week at the American Society of Clinical Oncology, at their annual meeting in Chicago, has made the strongest case yet that sleep deprivation is contributing to the documented surge in cancer among adults under 50. The study compared data from more than 400,000 people with insomnia aged 18 to 50 against 18.4 million people without sleep issues. It found that insomniacs were up to 3 times more likely to develop certain cancers, including bowel, breast, liver, kidney, pancreatic, and ovarian cancer within 5 years compared to people without diagnosed sleep problems. Sleep disorders are on the rise in the UK and US, coinciding almost directly with the arrival of smartphones and other blue light emitting technology that suppress melatonin, the hormone that triggers sleep onset. 2/3 of 17 to 23-year-olds now struggle with sleep. The mechanism behind the sleep cancer link involves several pathways. When you don't sleep, your immune system doesn't perform the surveillance and repair functions it does during sleep. Chronic sleep deprivation also disrupts the hormonal environment in ways that can promote cell growth, the same biological pathway that cancer hijacks. It also elevates inflammation markers that have been linked to tumor growth. I want to connect this to something we covered earlier in the month, the one-night sleep deprivation and Alzheimer's protein spike. What we're now seeing is that the consequences of chronic poor sleep aren't limited to cognitive decline. They extend to cancer risk in ways that researchers are still mapping out, but are increasingly confident about. Of all the lifestyle choices linked to increased cancer risk, sleep deprivation wouldn't have been most people's first guess. Let's all go take a nap. The research on sleep keeps getting more alarming, not less, and the answer remains the same boring one it always has been. Go to bed. Put down the phone. The algorithm will be there tomorrow. What's the specific thing you constantly sacrifice sleep for? And when you're honest with yourself, do you think it's actually worth the trade?
Oh, wow. I just had the weirdest dream. You know you're driving, right?
The Titanic series on SideQuest just hit the night of collision, no pun intended. If you've been waiting to get into the series, now might be the moment. We're at the center of it. The iceberg has been spotted, the ship is turning, and in the next episode, everything changes. Free condensed version for everyone, full extended cut for paid subscribers. Find SideQuest wherever you get your podcasts or through the Substack.
Would you like to know more?
A United Airlines flight crossing the Atlantic was turned around after a child's Bluetooth device was found to be named Bomb. The aircraft returned to its departure airport, the device was identified, and the flight eventually continued. I'm thinking it might be time to institute a basic competency test before boarding a commercial aircraft. I also want to add that the child in question presumably thought this was funny, and on one level, one very small, very inconvenient level, they're not entirely wrong.
Attention, ladies and gentlemen, please. Would everybody move to the lounge who is not carrying a bomb?
A group of men emerged from a manhole in the middle of a busy Brooklyn street, prompting police to establish a perimeter. The men were eventually identified, and the situation resolved without incident. This is clearly a promotional stunt for an upcoming Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles reboot, and I'm maintaining that position pending contrary evidence.
Well, there's so many holes in First Avenue, we really didn't think anyone would notice.
Gen Z is embracing tanning despite decades of skin cancer warnings, with the trend known as tan maxing spreading on social media as an aesthetic goal. Listen, we've all done something our dermatologist would disapprove of at some point, and sunscreen access was not always what it is now, but please wear sunscreen.
I just want to look good. You, my friend, look so damn leathery, I'm honestly tempted to wrap you around a baseball, cinch you up with a belt, and stick you under my mattress so that you're good and broken in for the big game on Sunday.
A humanoid robot has cleaned its first U.S. apartment, navigating around furniture, handling a mop, and completing basic tidying tasks without human assistance. Listen, we may not have flying cars from the Jetsons, but we do have robot maids now, which is something. Whether the robot appreciated the apartment or judged its occupants is currently unknown.
Bite my shiny metal ass.
That's it for new side quests. 3 questions to open your June. When you realized you were more cynical than you used to be. Whether you actually believe intelligent life exists elsewhere, and what would change if it were confirmed. And what you're sacrificing sleep for, and whether it's worth it. Email me at newsidequest@gmail.com or hit me up in the Substack comments. See you tomorrow.